Welcome to the WTR Healthcare Happenings Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gerdeman, Vice Chair and Co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer of Water Tower Research. In today's podcast episode, I have the pleasure of being joined by Jim Martin, Co-CEO and CFO of Cocrystal Pharma, NASDAQ ticker symbol COCP. Also joining us is my Water Tower Research Equity Research colleague, Robert Sassoon. Cocrystal Pharma is a clinical stage biotech company focused on discovering and developing novel antiviral therapeutics that target the replication process of influenza viruses, coronaviruses, noroviruses, and hepatitis C viruses. Cocrystal employs unique structure-based technologies to create viable antiviral drugs. Jim and Robert, thanks for joining me today.
Good
Thank
morning.
you, Tim. Appreciate it. And nice to meet you and look forward to telling you about Cocrystal.
Likewise. So, Jim, just to kick things off, would you be kind enough to start by giving us 30,000 foot rather overview of Cocrystal Pharma and the company's focus on antivirals?
Yeah, sure, Tim. So the company itself has created from a partnership with Dr. Philip Frost, who initially financed the company, and Dr. Roger Kornberg, who was a good friend of his, and he had just won his Nobel Prize a couple years prior, and developed this idea of creating a antiviral drug that could treat a number of diseases. It's called a panviral drug, and started focusing on developing a platform that could do this, taking his expertise and what he'd won his Nobel Prize in. They industrialized a platform to develop these drugs. And they brought in Dr. Gary Wilcox and Dr. Sam Lee to run the labs, which have been very successful in developing these novel antiviral drugs, which also is all the company is focused on is antiviral therapeutic drugs. It hasn't had any distractions from that in developing the platform and developing this antivirals that we currently have into clinicals.
Excellent. And also, before I turn it over to Robert to ask several questions, I always like to ask our guests to provide a quick overview of their professional backgrounds.
Oh, so my professional background is in accounting and finance. I'm a CPA and have been in biotech for about close to 20 years, mostly working with a group here in Miami, Florida, Dr. Philip Frost and the team, taking care of a number of their companies early on, doing a lot of M&A activities, and have settled down over the past 8 years with Cocrystal to focus on developing these compounds, which the team here was very excited about the company, the platform, and the scientific strength of this company, and thought it just needed the financial side and this business side to be taken care of so that they could focus on developing these compounds.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that overview, and it's always nice to meet a fellow Miami resident. With that, I'll turn it over to Robert.
Thanks, Tim, and thank you, Jim, for joining us on this podcast. I was always excited about potentially disruptive technologies, particularly in the healthcare industry and biotech industry. So before we get into your pipeline, can you explain what differentiates your structure-based drug discovery platform, and how does it improve on the traditional drug discovery process?
So the strength of our drug discovery platform that I spoke of earlier is the ability to industrialize the process of crystallography, which, simply putting it, takes the viruses and can crystallize them, much like a salt crystal, and much smaller. And what they do is we send them off to working with these high X-ray beams that are only in select locations, like at Berkeley. And we actually shoot those laser beams through the crystal, the virus crystal. And the other side comes out an atomic level structure of these viruses. And we do this over and over again with the various strains of this virus and focus on the replication area of these viruses and all the strains. And in a sense, we overlay all of the strains, the atomic level structure of these strains. We overlay them and look for the one area, this highly conserved region in the replication of these viruses that does not mutate. As you know, Robert, viruses have two strengths. One, they replicate very quickly, and they have this incredible ability to mutate. And by finding, but they all have this one area, that never mutates. You can find it. It's like Sherlock Holmes detective work, but you overlay all of the atomic structures and you seek out this one area, and then you start finding compounds. You develop them to bind to that one area to disrupt that replication. What this does is you stop the replication of the virus by disrupting it, and you also find an area that it can't mutate around because it's never had a mutation in this highly conserved region on the virus, because it knows if it ever did mutate, it never went anywhere because it can't continue on its journey. But by doing this, we are able to create these very broad spectrum therapeutics. And that's what we focus on. We don't just develop something to disrupt one strain. It's very important that we find this conserved area and bind to it and disrupt the replication. And if you stop the replication, you'll stop the virus. Viruses, they replicate very quickly. They overwhelm the body. A lot of the bad things that happen, like in the case of influenza, it's the body reacting to that. So the idea is you have to stop the replication so that doesn't happen. So that's why we focus on very broad spectrum, replication targeted direct acting antivirals.
So your primary program is CDI 988, and maybe you can discuss that program and explain why norovirus was selected as the lead indication.
It's a good question, because we did go complete a phase 1 with this drug already. And in the phase 1, we indicated it was for coronaviruses, not just COVID-19, but again, broad spectrum, MERS, and all the various coronaviruses, and for norovirus. So it was a dual indication, going back to, as the founders want to create these pan-viral drugs. Now, we've also seen antiviral activities with this 988 in a number of other viral diseases. So we think it can even treat other diseases. But for phase 1, you can do that. You can have multiple indications because a phase 1 is primarily for safety and tolerability. And we found this to be very safe with no AEs. We also were able to give very high dosage of this drug to people, and they were able to tolerate it. So given that, now we're moving more towards the phase 2 area for efficacy. This is where you have to really break out what indication are you going to go for. Obviously, with efficacy, you can't do multiple indications. So we targeted norovirus primarily because it is a disease that has not been addressed. Just so you know, Robert, there is no vaccine available in the world, and there's no therapeutic available. You can only treat the symptoms, dehydration, give water and whatnot. Being in South Florida, we have the cruise line industry, which significantly has an issue with norovirus. It makes the news a lot, but it's a disease that also affects the military. You won't see that in the news. Any bases, anywhere there's humans in a confined area, submarine ships, bases, also any type of senior centers, hospitals, anywhere people are really grouped together. So we saw a market opportunity, an unmet need, and an excitement to actually develop a drug for something that has no drug out there available. So we decided to, in coronaviruses, there's a number of competition out there, and we thought which we will go back to for 988 for that in the future. But our first to choose one, we went with the norovirus because of all the reasons I just mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, just as a footnote to that, can you actually explain what, because some of our listeners may not know what that is. It's not as familiar as coronavirus or other viruses, influenza, for example. But maybe you can explain briefly what norovirus is.
Norovirus, when I say fast spreading, norovirus is quoted as the Ferrari of viruses, very incredibly fast spreading. A lot of diseases can be transferred, and maybe through the air, maybe through touch. Norovirus can be transferred in all the ways above. It can be transferred by touching a handle, through the air, any type of contact. It's highly contagious, and one of the first lines of defenses is immediate quarantine. The other problem with norovirus is that it is just a terrible disease where you will be, out of commission for, the number of days. I always say the good news about norovirus is that it's not a high mobility rate, but it is a disease that moves fast and gets people really sick. And again, quote, people say they almost wish they were dead because it's so bad. There's vomiting and heavy diarrhea and very intense.
Right.
Also, people with another issue is, and I really didn't know this until a few years ago, but there's a population, anyone that's immune compromised, they have a hard time getting rid of any type of virus. So they really need something to help them. And since there's nothing for norovirus, there's people that have long-term norovirus. They've been sick for over a year. And I'm getting emails all the time. There's people that want to actually try our drug, and it's like it's not even approved yet. Doctors reaching out for patients trying to say, can you help us? And they have to wait, obviously. But there is a group called, long-term norovirus. So with that, we're looking into, I think we can, we're looking into ways to streamline the FDA approval. And I think there's a lot of positive outlook on that.
Right.
We'll get that done.
Well, thank you for that. Well, what challenges have other companies faced in developing norovirus vaccines and therapeutics, and how does your approach overcome those obstacles?
Well, there's only a few companies that have really dared to do this, and there's a number of reasons why. Some of the key challenges is there's an extensive generic and anti-genetic diversity, over 30 genotypes of this virus. Now, we think our platform was designed for something like this. As I said, the way we develop drugs is to go after all the genotypes through finding a highly conserved area that does not mutate. Norovirus also, as a gastrointestinal disease, has a very short-lived immunity. So vaccines will build up the immunity of a host, and because it's a short-lived immunity, the vaccines don't last very long. That's been a big challenge. And there's other smaller, there's other challenges, like there's not really there's limited animal models available, a lack of reliable immune correlates. So it's a bit of a challenge that some companies have stayed away from because of the above.
Right. So why is it strategically important to develop oral CDI 988 both as a therapeutic treatment and for preventive intervention?
Well, because this disease moves so quickly and usually is in confined areas, like naval ships and bases and cruise ships, It's hard to get away. You can quarantine people. Obviously, air needs to circulate through wherever people are, so it is highly contagious. So it's very difficult to control. So because of that, and because they're stuck where they're at, you ideally want to, for example, let's say we're on a ship, you ideally want to be able to give people a drug to treat the ones that are sick. And then the idea is a prophylactic for everyone else that's stuck on that ship to be able to prevent them from getting the disease. Now, prophylactic is very short term. It's not like a vaccine that can last, months and a year. So all you'll get is the short-term protection just till you can get to a different place, which sometimes can take up to a week. So that's why it's important to be able to treat people and to help people prevent from getting sick. And this is also, you go home. You don't, if you were sick, Robert, you would not want your family to get sick. So you could try hide, go into a special room, stay away from everyone. But this disease is transmits so easy that you'd really want to protect your family too. So prophylactic therapeutic would be ideal.
Okay. So could you walk us through the design of your norovirus human challenge study and discuss the study endpoints?
Yes, sure. So it's an interesting study in that it's a challenge model. And in a challenge model, you will take healthy patients, infect them with the disease, and then try to treat it or prevent it in this case. Everyone always asks who's willing to do this, who's willing to get sick. We're looking at doing this at Emory University. It's college students. A lot of them are in the medical field, and they get paid. I think that's a big incentive. And another thing is, it's short-lived. So we do get these subjects that volunteer and they want to experience it. Some of them I guess it's like if you're going to become a doctor, you want to know what it feels like. Anyways, I get that question a lot, so I thought I'd answer it. And that's the subjects we get. So what we do at first is we have different cohorts. So the first one, we're going to give them the disease only. And we want to make sure that our batch of the disease works well. And we want to test to make sure that 75% of those infected actually get the disease and get the symptoms. Then after that, the next batch would be where we will split it into different sections, and that some will be given the disease, the norovirus, and the 988 drug. And this is to see if they will develop any symptoms. We've already had the first cohort. We saw that, people get sick. Now you give them the norovirus and you give them the treatment and to see if they don't get sick. And that's going to test to see if there's any prophylactic to our drug. Can you prevent them from getting sick? And people get sick because you give them this drug and you've tested it. The other side of that would be people that will get these subjects will get the illness, wait a day or two to get the symptoms, and then they will be given the 988 as a treatment. So those other cohorts will get both the disease. They will all get the disease, but some will get the treatment right away as a preventive, and some will get it after they develop symptoms to see how it treats it. And this data will, tell whether we have a compelling antiviral solution to this.
Well, it's interesting to get willing volunteers to get to be plugged in with the disease. Anyway, assuming the challenge study yields positive results, what might be the next steps in CDI's CDI 988's development?
So we would look to, so this challenge model is on the most prevalent strain, the G2.4, but there's other strains. We would continue doing additional challenge models while building upon this data and eventually bringing this into there's multiple routes. We may just need to do a phase 2/3. But once you get the compelling data that we hope for from this trial, there would be a lot of different opportunities, both within the government and within, obviously, the private investment community. The government has shown very strong interest in this, as you can imagine, especially when you're dealing with the military. Norovirus can shut down a ship and everyone gets sick. They can't have that. So there is a very strong need in the military for something like this. And everyone supports it and hope we have the answer. And we do too. I mean, so there'd be a lot of strong support there. And once we have some data is what they, is all they'd like to see. I think that, that would be one of the first areas we would look at, is to work with the government and for non-dilutive, both in grants and funding, and also just using their support structures to go on ahead and continue getting more data.
You mentioned grants. What is the scope of the recent NIH grant you received, and what additional types of US government grant programs are you actively pursuing?
So the first part of that question, that was we also have an influenza asset, and we also have preclinical influenza assets for influenza AB. And the NIH is interested in the AB development. So the grant was for us to continue to do preclinical work and develop the influenza AB compounds that we have. But all this is part of our taking a step back. A few years ago, we brought in some heavyweight consultants that work with the government, and we've made a lot of inroads into the government. And this is one of the things that came up as, the government, even though I said the generals want it, you still have to find a program to fit things in. And sometimes programs have to be developed, government programs, and grants, they have to be developed just for you once, so not only the NIH, but BARDA's a big one, so there's a few groups that are putting together, that we talk to and communicate, realize the need, and we're looking to work with in the future.
So what key milestones or accomplishments should stakeholders expect from Cocrystal over the next year?
So right now, the norovirus challenge study is in full gear. We've already started enrolling subjects and expect to have some top-line data by June, by the end of the second quarter, of this year. And that will be a pretty big milestone if we could show either the preventative aspect or the therapeutic aspect of 988, because either one would be a home run. You may even get both, is what we believe, but you really have to get the data to support that. So I think that would be the big milestone we're looking for. And from that, a lot of things can start to happen.
Okay, so Jim, now what final thoughts would you like to leave with investors, particularly regarding the Cocrystal investment thesis?
So I think Cocrystal has a very strong development platform. I mean, we've worked with companies like Teva Pharmaceuticals, with Merck, in developing drugs with them through partnerships. I think this platform is very strong. Nobel Laureate developed by Roger Kornberg and Dr. Sam Lee. With that, we've developed a number of very strong antivirals. That's been our only focus. Some of these, like going back to Hep C, which we did probably about 5 years ago. Market's been tough on that, and that's a different thing. But with norovirus, there is a very strong need The the so I think we have as a company, I think we have a very strong focus on a very, which seems to be a very good antiviral with 988, and we have this indication that there's no vaccine, no therapeutic, and the strong demand is there. It's. I mean, I think we have a great influenza drug too, but there's no question when you have something like norovirus where there's no treatment, no vaccine, that to be the first to market, you know, and there's even questions whether we would be the ones or would someone come and scoop up the company. That's always, that's the way big pharma seems to work. But so there's a number of opportunities. I think a lot of this is going to be focused on this trial that we're doing, and I think people should keep an eye on. I think we're, as most people would say, we're very undervalued at this point. It would be a good, I think, for a lot of people, worth putting some of an investment in here of something in the open, in the markets to be ready in case we do have this home run, which we're looking forward to achieving. Are my thoughts. And
Well, thank you, Jim, for walking us through Cocrystal Pharma and the CDI 988 program and the important dynamics driving the story. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks, Robert. Jim, as you were talking, I was just kind of reflecting on the fact that Robert and I discuss a lot of diseases and mental and physical ailments on this podcast, many of which are pretty foreign concepts to a lot of investors. But I would say that the targets that you're focusing on, every investor should relate to. So, yeah, it's a very interesting story. And thanks so much for your time and best wishes getting to commercialization.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Tim, appreciate it.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, as well as visiting www.watertowerresearch.com to stay up to speed on the company's small cap written research reports, podcasts, fireside chats, industry-specific symposiums, and conference schedules. We will see you next time for another edition of the WTR Healthcare Happenings Podcast. Finally, a special thanks to the producer and editor of the podcast, Krista Fitzpatrick.